Hey guys. This is part 3 of What If Naruto Met a Legendary Creature. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start.
We are pain, that's all. We are God.
Chapter 6. The seats which housed the tournament finals were filled, packed with shinobi from across the nation and the civilians of Kirigakure. Sitting at the center of it all was the Mizukage herself, Ao standing next to her as her protective guard along with the 2 squads of Kiri's Umbu that were hidden in the shadows and surrounding mists. Beside her was the Raijuu, A, and his 2 personal guards Darui and C, the other seat empty. Soon footsteps came up and both the Mizukage and Raijuu looked to find Tsunade coming up the stairs. Beside her were her 2 Jonin guards, Raijuu and Ginma. Mei smiled as she waved her hand to Tsunade's seat and looked at her fellow female Kage. It is an honor to finally meet your acquaintance Tsunade Dano. Welcome to the Chunin exams, she said gracefully as she closed her eyes and bowed her head slightly. Tsunade sat upon her seat and looked at Mei. It's a pleasure to meet your acquaintance as well, Mizukage Dano. She looked over to see the Raijuu, you as well, Dano. The Raijuu merely grunted in acknowledgement, his 2 guards C and Darui sweat dropping a bit. Tsunade then glanced around and raised an eyebrow. Mizukage Dano, I heard there was a girl from IWA taking part, the Tsuchikage's own granddaughter at that, so where is he? Tsunade asked. Mei giggled at the blonde before answering. Oh, Tsuchikage Dano was said to have back problems, and so he had to stay in his village. Tsunade and a sweat dropped at that. Anoki was old, in fact he was the knight-aimed Tsuchikage and he had yet to choose a successor, so it was understandable his spinal troubles would be painful to such a degree he couldn't leave Iwagakure. I looked onward as the proctor had walked to the center of the stage below. Seems like the matches will begin. He looked over to the other Kage and smirked. I hope your shinobi are up to the challenge of facing Kumo's top student. Samui is a talented young girl. I am not surprised at all, she showed quite the talent in the preliminaries. Though do not think that there are opponents who won't give her a hard time, Mei said with a smile. 2 of Kiri's finest are in this exam, as well some of the other villages as well. Especially the one from Konoha. Tsunade looked over to the auburn-haired woman curiously. Yes, what went on? I was informed that the team we had sent did not make the first part of the exam. Oh, that is because Jiraiya-san came here with his disciple. Mei looked at Tsunade. He was rather amazing. His skill is not known since all he did was use a Kage Bunshin during that fight. Kage Bunshin. But no genin knows that except dash a vein slightly popped on her head, twitching along with her left eye as her annoyance was now known to the world. Mei and A looked at each other with questionable looks before glancing back at the mentally raging Senju matriarch. Don't tell me that Gaki's here. Damn it, Jiraiya! She regained her composure as she smiled softly. Excuse me, but is Jiraiya here right now? The Senju asked the Mizukage, but as if on cue a puff of smoke appeared in front of them and the Toad Hermit had appeared in his oh-so-elegant poses. Did somebody call the great Toad Sage the Gaul? Before he could even finish his sentence, the female Hokage punched him directly in the face, sending him backward flying across the ring. Dumbeowis! She roared, jumping down from the ring, leaving 2 Kage and their bodyguards sweat dropping at the sight. Looks like her right arm's still as deadly strong as it always was back when we arm wrestled a few years ago. I mentally chuckled as he remembered he nearly lost to the busty blonde Godame. It was after a few minutes of Jiraiya regrouping from his agonizing pain and Tsunade holding the urge in hopes of damaging his face even further that things cooled down. Now Baka, you better tell me right now why the hell Naruto is in the exams. I figured you would tell me if something like this would occur, but it seems that your thick skull can't get some sense of thought into it. You wound me, Tsunade. You don't trust my own judgments on whether or not I feel like my own apprentice is qualified to become a chunin or not? He said ever so dramatically. Absurd. I think I know when the time is right, and I saw this as said time. This was a good enough time as it is anyway. He needs some more experience facing a variety of shinobi. Tsunade narrowed her eyes before closing them and sighed. He did have a point about that, and it had been a year since they had left. She had hoped the pervert had taught the blonde something useful. Being here might have been a good reason. Alright then, moron, tell me honestly, how is his training so far? It must mean that he has progressed to be in the finals. I would say he has vastly improved his skills. As the Mizukage mentioned, he beat his opponent in the preliminaries with just a simple clone. He can hold his clones out longer, and doesn't need to use hand signs to summon a dozen unless he is going to the range beyond that. Jiraiya said. Mind telling me how many? She asked. 4,000 is his max at the moment, when using about a third of his chakra. He stated, surprising the two Kage next to Tsunade, though ever since he learned the secret of Kage Bunshin he rarely uses it that much unless he is attempting to overwhelm the enemy. He's more relying on his own fighting skills with little to no help from clones now, and plus I managed to capitalize on that sneaky little prankster brain of his and turned it into a strategic brain. Though if you're wondering how his taijutsu is faring, I would guess he has 2, maybe 3 different styles. Aside from learning the frog katas and improving his own mixed fighting style, he learned 2 different styles. Tsunade smirked. She always knew Naruto had such large reserves, but those reserves were still higher than most people his own age, and not simply because of his Uzumaki lineage, but the Kyuubi as well. You taught him 2 other styles. I thought taijutsu wasn't your expertise compared to ninjutsu and fuinjutsu? I'm good at taijutsu, maybe not as good as you, but I know my skills can match up to Orochimaru in hand-to-hand combat. Jiraiya smirked, though I didn't teach him. I'll give you details upon that later with some other news, he said softly. Tsunade frowned as she looked at Jiraiya. A shiver running up her spine warned her of an impending doom for her, but she shrugged it off thinking it was a simple chill. Whatever Jiraiya had to say though, it must be something of great importance to be something as serious as this. The look in his eyes that she can see was as if he was reminiscing moments, but what, she would never know. Though she saw his eyes shift back to normal before he spoke, the white-haired Sannin member gave her a confident grin. Though I know he has this in the bag. I estimate he is at least Tokubetsu Jonin right now with his own skills. He varies from the main 3 in Fuinjutsu and Kenjutsu. The only skill he lacks is Genjutsu. Aside from dispelling or sensing Genjutsu, he has no existing skills in that field, he said. Not to mention having 3 affinities, he has become quite a powerhouse. Tsunade widened her eyes at Jiraiya. Was he just being overconfident or truly being serious? Had Naruto reached that level in such a short time? Having 3 affinities? His skills being up past even some of the class members from the academy? She was then immediately snapped out of her thoughts regarding the skills of Konoha's Jinchuriki, as she had heard the proctor call out the contenders of the finals. She looked around and gazed down at the contestants, none of which she could find Naruto. Jiraiya, where is Naruto? She asked. What do you mean? He questioned, looking down as he gazed at the group and pointed down upon the character in the black and teal vest with a hood over his head. The Uzumaki symbol was emblazoned upon the back of the vest, and a ninjato was lazily being twirled in his hands, bandages covering said hands and slightly up his forearms. He wore a pair of black pants that ended just above his ankles and wore a pair of black sandals, the Konoha Hitadiate still wrapped firmly around his forehead. He's right there, he just changed into different clothes since he was training with tremendous effort this past month. You'll be surprised with the number of tricks he has up his sleeve. Tsunade had simply stared at the Naruto she was now looking at in surprise. For starters, he was taller, and the aura he gave out was more mature. Second, the kodachi she noticed earlier must have either meant he had experience with it, or it was just for showing off. Though the one thing that truly shocked her, he wasn't wearing orange. It was like a sign from Kami that the horrid orange that he had worn was no more and could not blind and disgrace his fellow shinobi for wearing such a disgraceful set of clothing. She smiled slightly and focused only on Naruto. Show me what you got, Gaki. XXXXX. Naruto's eyes appeared from the shadows of his hood as he looked at the proctor with a gaze as if the man in front of him wasn't there. Thoughts ran deep into his mind, planning strategies through which opponents he would possibly face during different outcomes. It was a strategy that he would have had to thank Shikamaru for giving him the idea. The guy was a lazy ass, but was possibly the greatest strategist out of everyone in his class, which gave Naruto the idea to let a clone to read a book of advanced strategic warfare and guerrilla tactics while he got ahead on his skills on Fuinjutsu, and increase his use of jutsu and hand-to-hand combat. Seems like this tournament will be easier to pass through, at least Niji isn't in this one, he thought. What do you guys think about my opponent that I have to face? I feel as though you may have the advantage for this battle. You've improved vastly during the month of training. Aside from that, you have a few more tricks up your sleeve which I believe will drag the fight into your favor. Kamina looked upon his student. Even with the strategies you have, I still believe that this is in your favor, however. I would advise you not to get cocky just because I said this. Your opponent is strong on her own accord, as your future opponents. I would advise caution with your 3 opponents, especially if you face the Kage boy. He was very fast and aimed with quick precision when he used his attack in his preliminary match. He must be of high Chunin level if his skill is that vast at his age. Naruto grunted. Anything you have to say, Kyubi? Nothing I can really say, Gaki. What can I say that the Raijuu already said? All I can say is win as my vessel, otherwise I will be giving you a damn headache for weeks. You have your little surprise unless one of them tries to pull a big surprise on you, so you can just pull out your surprise, Kurama said. Now if I wanted anything else to say, I would tell you to quit chatting with us and pay attention to your surroundings. Your name was fucking called, you idiotic hairless monkey. Naruto flinched upward as he was now staring upon the proctor, who was narrowing his eyes staring at Naruto. Boy, are you done daydreaming, or do I need to skip to the next match? He asked sternly. Naruto narrowed his eyes as he shook his head. No need for that, I am ready, Naruto said as he walked towards the proctor, his opponent across from him. He gazed upon the kunoichi with a focused gaze of sapphire eyes and slowly lowered his head. He took off his hood. His blonde hair was slightly longer, though was slightly wilder on one side, the spikes more profound, and his whiskers were more in depth and slightly bolder. All right. The first match will be Uzumaki Naruto of Konoha versus Shirshir Megumi of Kusa. There was a brief pause as the proctor raised his hand. Hey Jaime, the proctor said as he brought down his arm, immediately disappearing out of the ring with vast speed. Naruto whipped his kunai out, his eyes never leaving his adversary. So you said you are from a clan called the Shirshir, right? The girl's ears perked up at the question, but she decided to humor her opponent and nodded. I wanted to apologize about my friend, he said softly. Your friend? The white-haired girl tilted her head in confusion. Yeah. His eyes slightly furrowed. A friend of mine, about over a year ago, had copied one of your family members' taijutsu combos, the one called Shirshir Rindan, that you had used. Megumi's eyes narrowed slightly as she clenched her fist, her knuckles popping loudly. Ah, yes, I remember you mentioned this beforehand. Well then, given the time frame of your teammate's heinous act of copying my clan's attack, it is then safe to deduce that it was my brother that he copied. Her fist slowly unclenched, her eyes sharpened, becoming slit-like and showing great ferocity. Then I'll just have to amend for my brother's shame with a victory as clan head, she said, pulling out a set of tiger claws that she gripped firmly between her fingers. She's a lot like Kiba, animal-like, brash, comes from a clan raised based on animals, and is a future matriarch. I'm feeling a huge vibe of irony here. He threw his kunai in the center of the field and pulled out 3 shuriken. Plan 1 is set into motion. The moment that Naruto threw his kunai, the battle had begun. The female shinobi had come with a frontal assault. Naruto had thrown the shuriken, making multiple hand signs. Shuriken Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Out of the shadows, the throwing weapons multiplied into larger, more vast numbers. From 3 came 300. All spinning rapidly as they headed towards the female. Megumi smirked, channeling chakra into her claws, enough that they extend up to 5 inches in length. She launched her claws toward the kunai and smirked when she saw the kunai explode into a cloud of smoke, signifying it was a Kage Bunshin in disguise. And Plan 1 has failed. Naruto frowned as he channeled wind chakra into his hand and quickly released it into an outward motion. The force in which repelled the chakra-based attack to where it had dissipated from sight. Said force had pushed Megumi back, sending her off her feet as she was in the air, and hit the wall behind her. Giving a low grunt of pain, she immediately jumped to her feet, chakra coming to her fingertips and reforming into claws once more. What was that jutsu you used? It felt like I was pushed by an invisible force, she said with contempt, attempting to intimidate the blonde, but with no avail as he gave a smirk. It had irritated her enough, in which her eyes sharpened, her pupils seeming to transform into vertical slits. It was a creation of my own, with a little help of course. It's a wind-based attack which uses the pressure of the air current to make a wall of wind to repel attacks, be it weapons, hand-to-hand combat, or ninjutsu. I based it on two forms, one for defense and other for offense. That was the defense form I called Futon, Fujinhiki. Naruto then quickly flashed through 3 more hand signs, ending on rat before clapping his hands together. Now let me show you the offensive version. Futon, Fujin Seiken. A powerful bullet of compressed wind shot forth from Naruto's outstretched palms. Megumi's eyes widened before countering with a trio of wind chakra blades to fight off the wind blast. The collision of wind ninjutsu caused a large dust cloud to form, but another blast of wind from Naruto scattered the dust cloud, eyes narrowing when he saw Megumi was no longer standing where she previously was. Naruto glanced around, sniffing the area to try and pick up her scent. His eyes shifted to the right as he did so, and he ducked beneath her kick as she reappeared to strike him. She sailed over his head and skidded along the ground, kicking up dirt as she used friction to stop herself. However, she didn't give Naruto time to react and channeled chakra into her feet to increase her speed and bring herself back to the blonde's location. She began to continue with her taijutsu strikes. She lashed with her tiger claws in combination with her punches, things Naruto made sure to avoid with haste. He ducked underneath a right hook and countered with an uppercut, but Megumi leaned back to avoid it before spinning and knocking away the arm, and then went with the momentum to lash out with another kick that broke down Naruto's guard as he aimed to use his other arm to block it. Now open to her, Megumi stabbed forth with her tiger claws and impaled Naruto through the chest. Naruto's eyes widened as blood came forth. Megumi smirked, but then growled in frustration as the Naruto before her vanished in a plume of smoke. The ground beneath her then cracked, and her eyes widened as a fist burst forth and nailed her in the chin. "Isn't that the same tactic you pulled on the Hyuga Gaki?" Kurama said with a deadpan voice. "Sometimes it's good to keep a few here and there classics." Naruto thought back to his bijou. As Naruto landed on the ground, he grabbed the airborne Megumi by her ankles and swung her down into the ground before lifting her up again and bringing her down for another slam. Having chakra as a muscle enhancement did have its perks. With a third and final slam, Megumi released a silent scream of pain as her back burned with white-hot pain. However, she was a kunoichi, and not to mention she was the future matriarch of her clan. She couldn't lose her. She spun and freed her legs from Naruto's grip and then went into a handstand from her momentum and continued to spin on her hands. A twister of kicks slammed into Naruto's body before she went into a forward roll and used the momentum to slam a chakra-infused upward kick to his chin. Naruto's jaws met with a loud clack and he soared upwards. The Shusher clan heir then smirked as she got into position. She leaped after her airborne opponent and hovered beneath his body before poking the small of his back, his eyes widening when he realized where he was. "Oh fuck." A powerful kick slammed into his ribs before Megumi reversed the rotation of her body using the force of her kick to spin and slam an elbow into his face. She twisted again and followed with a punch and then again with an elbow, all of which hit Naruto pretty damn hard. She then used gravity to aid with her final spin and crashed her heel down into Naruto's stomach. Sure Renden. The heel drop caused Naruto to cough up some blood from the internal damage. Naruto gritted his teeth in pain before chuckling and vanishing in a plume of smoke. Another clone, Kyuso. She was knocked out of her thoughts when she saw a kunai land on the ground near her, a burning explosive note attached to its handle. Katsu. The boom echoed throughout the stadium and many of the viewers wondered if the white-haired Kusaguro was dead. However, they spotted a length of smoke extending out of the cloud. The smoke melted away to show Megumi panting, covered in minor burns, but otherwise unharmed as she had used Naruto's own principle behind the Fujinhiki to push herself away from kunai before it went off and managed to avoid a fatal strike. As she landed on the ground, she found the blonde Jinchuriki watching her with a glare. You stole my move to get away from that kunai. He snarled. We're ninja, we're not expected to fight fair, and plus I didn't steal your move. I merely used the pushing principle behind it to get as far away from it as I could get in those few short seconds, she retorted. Naruto then sent a flurry of shuriken her way, but she countered with her own star-shaped weaponry. The shuriken all clashed and scattered throughout the area, but the two shinobi didn't let up as they neared each other. Naruto drew his tanto and Megumi readied her claws. Both weapons, laced with wind chakra, impacted with one another in an epic clang that resounded through the air. Naruto blocked the slash from Megumi before spinning and going low, aiming to sever a tendon in her leg, but she quickly jumped over it, flipping overhead to land behind him, and then aimed to slash him once more. Naruto quickly leaned back, but a small lock of hair was cut off, showing how close he was to being struck by the wind blades. He then kicked her extended wrist to allow him to move away from her before leaping away and then slashing downwards. Uzumaki Ryu, Kazujiri. The arc of wind carved a thin line in the ground, but Megumi crossed her arms in front of her face before slashing her tiger claws harshly. 6 blades of intersecting chakra filled their currents, formed a grid-like pattern that tore through Naruto's own wind attack and continued towards him. The blonde leaped over his opponent's strike and aimed a downward stab at her. His tanto impaled the ground as she stepped out of the attack's path, but Naruto quickly went with his momentum and channeled the momentum to carve the earth and bring his blade up for an upward slash. The white-haired kunoichi leaned back as she heard the soft humming of wind chakra around the blade. She and Naruto then began a heavy clash of blades, parrying, dodging, striking and flipping over any attack they made against each other. The viewers in the stands watched with amazement as the Kusa Kunoichi and Konoha shinobi fought, sparks flying with every clash they made. Finally, Naruto made a downward slash with his tanto and Megumi was forced to raise her tiger claws in an X-shaped manner to catch the blade and prevent it from carving her in half. Orange sparks flew forth due to the friction and Megumi's arms were shaking as Naruto continued to pour on the force of his blade. Megumi gritted her teeth and her eyes widened when she began to hear a buzzing sound. Buzzing? Wind chakra has a light hum, lightning chakra buzzing, but why is my wind chakra not cutting through it then? Though the laws of elemental affinities dictated that lightning is weaker than wind, it depended on how one utilized the chakra that would result in wind overpowering lightning. While most people coded weapons and lightning for an electrocuting edge to their attacks, Naruto found a way to overcome this hurdle when it came to a clash against wind chakra. While Naruto focused one half of his attention on keeping his wind chakra coating the blade, he had the other half focus on applying lightning elemental chakra to the internal structure of his tanto. This high level of electrical charge would result in the molecules of his blade beginning to resonate at a higher frequency, and thus allow it to phase through his opponent's weapon's molecular structure, as if it were a vibrating serrated blade. Naruto grinned as he tore through Megumi's tiger claws and then continued onwards with his attack and slashed her. However, his eyes widened when he saw Megumi suddenly vanish into smoke, revealing a log. Kawarimi! His eyes widened even further when the familiar hissing sound of a burning explosive note met his ears. The explosion went off as his mouth opened to release a curse. Megumi watched from her perch on the wall of the stadium, and her eyes narrowed at the burning cloud of smoke. He fought well, but I expected a much longer fight from the one who tamed the kaiju of Kiri, she thought. Her eyes narrowed, however, when she saw a burst of blue chakra appear from the smoke cloud, scattering it and revealing Naruto standing with burns on his body. His body healed the best it could with a light application of Kurama's chakra, but he kept a few burns on his body to prevent his status of being a Jinchuriki from being public knowledge. Bad enough I got in here illegally, by myself and without permission from Bachan, but if they find out I'm a Jinchuriki they might actually kill me, Naruto thought. Though these burns hurt like a bitch. Kyubi, at least dull the pain for me. Whinigaki. You sound just like your mother. I don't know whether to take that as a compliment or an insult. I'd go with the latter, Kamina stated. Naruto then returned to observing his surroundings and looked around for his opponent. An application of chakra to the nasal cavity here, a sniff there, and voila, Naruto picked up on Megumi's scent. He turned to see her violet eyes boring into him, so he returned the stare in kind. He drew his tanto once more and channeled his lightning element into it before spinning the blade rapidly, electrical charge bleeding off of it to create a blue ring. He then stabbed the blade forward with enough force to release a pulse of lightning from it. Uzumaki Ryu, Shigekiha. The lightning bolt zeroed in on Megumi's position, but the white-haired Shirshur heir avoided it in a burst of speed and sped along the ground, leaving a trail of dust behind her. The image of her rushing towards him with a look that could kill had Naruto slightly flashed back to an image of when Sasuke had first used the Chidori against Gaara. The image was made just more similar when he saw chakra visibly build up around Megumi's arms. The chakra morphed and twisted into the image of twin lion heads, roaring and snarling as she reared them back. Naruto stepped back and avoided the first punch from the lion-like fist and ducked beneath the second. He quickly formed a clone to aid in deflecting the attacks, parrying each arm while also trying to counter with their own attacks. However, the flurry of fast-paced moves was getting overwhelming for the two Narutos, and the original was struck in the chin with a kick. Nemean Cestus. Bunshin Daibakuha. The lion-like fist impacted with devastating force, and a massive explosion that sounded like the roar of a lion followed a powerful shockwave of chakra exploded outwards, and a giant lion head avatar carried the damaged blonde across the battlefield and into the wall of the stadium. However, as Naruto was struck, his clone performed the kamikaze attack and wrapped its arms around the assaulting female, and allowed its chakra to explode and send her into the opposite wall. Both combatants groaned in pain as they fell from their respective wall imprints. Kyuso, I underestimate her taijutsu skills. I didn't know she would have come in with a kick if she was going to use those lion fists of hers to try and hit me. Well, at least you got her with an exploding clone, right? That should kill her if not knock her out, Kamina said to cheer up his student. Naruto winced as he rose to his feet, slowly. One half of my chakra may be a lot, but over the length of this fight I've been using up a lot of it with all the chakra-infused moves I've been pulling off. I lost nearly 1/4 of it during that weapon skirmish before, and plus elemental chakra seems to drain me a bit more, so in the end it wasn't enough chakra to kill her. Let alone knock her unconscious. His statement was indeed true as Megumi rose to her feet. Her snow-colored hair was unruly and her body was covered with cuts and burns. Naruto then saw her reach into her weapons pouch and pull out 2 small red pills. Oh crap, she has a soldier pill. Well, you have me, Kit. I don't really think you should be worried, the nine-tailed fox stated. Naruto watched as his opponent gained a boost in adrenaline and chakra. Enough playing around, Megumi yelled as she bit her thumb. She bit her thumb? Oh crap, she bit her thumb! Naruto exclaimed in his mind. He quickly did the same and flashed through hand signs. Megumi swiped a line of blood along the lion tattoo located on her right shoulder and slammed her hand down on the ground. Naruto's arms suddenly became coated with sealing arrays before he slammed his palm down on the ground as well, doing the same action simultaneously with Megumi. Kuchios no Jutsu. Giant plumes of smoke formed as a result of the summonings. On Megumi's side, the smoke cleared to reveal her standing atop a gigantic golden lion. Its eyes were a fierce green color, and its mane and the fur at the end of its tail was a darker gold than the rest of its body. Its teeth and claws were shining white, and it wore black armor on its forelimbs, back and hind limbs. Spikes protruded from the limb armor. The lion's size was comparable to that of Gamahiro. Shishio-sama, I have summoned you to aid me in fighting against an adversary who is proving quite difficult to put down. Please aid me. Megumi, you are the heir to the Shusher clan, so I will aid you in battle, however it will depend on who I will be fighting. Let me see the whelp that dares to try and take down a member of Kusa's greatest taijutsu masters. Shishio the lion boss snarled. On Naruto's side, Naruto was pretty nervous as he watched the smoke from the summoning start to clear. Come on, come on. Please let it work. Did it work? He asked himself. His question was answered when he heard the roar of his summon. Its muscular body coated with dark green scales, silver spines lined its back and piercing golden eyes glowed within its sockets. The tail of the beast cracked the earth and sharp claws and teeth were ready to tear flesh from bone. Yada! Gajira roared once more, breathing a column of emerald flame as it made its presence known to everyone. The kaiju of Kirigakure now lay beneath Naruto's own feet, and the blonde stood proudly atop the towering beast. The kaiju was quite a few feet taller than Shishio in comparison, and the lion boss could only stare in awe at his opponent's visage. Everyone up in the stadium froze with either shock, awe, horror, or a mixture of all three. Tsunade's mouth gaped with amaze. Jiraiya and the Mizuki's bodyguards were completely slack-jawed as they witnessed the summon of the legendary creature of the mist. That's what he was working on. You knew about this? Well, yeah, and no. Tsunade, what have you been giving your shinobi? A asked with a look of disbelief on his face. How the hell should I know? Ask this guy. She exclaimed, pointing at the Gama Sennin. Tsunade, Mei and all the bodyguards looked at Jiraiya, who was just as slack-jawed as everyone else. He said he wanted help with creating Fuinjutsu formulas for summoning and reverse summoning. I helped the Gaki out, and when I asked why, he said it was a secret. Jiraiya said, making air quote gestures with his fingers. Tsunade's eyes bored into him with a disbelieving look. I thought he wanted to have the toads help him, not the giant fucking fire-breathing reptile from the demon's hunting ground, he yelled, pointing at Gajira. The Mizuki's eyes just widened briefly before smiling, giving off a hungry video and staring down upon the blonde with lust. Seems I caught some eye candy, she thought as she licked her lips. Naruto froze as he felt a chill run down his spine and shuddered before shaking it off and getting his confidence back into gear. He was going to end this fight with the power of a kaiju. Give up, Megumi! Gajira is one monster you don't want to mess with. Gajira backed up his summoner's statement with a roar and breathed a stream of green flames once more at the feet of Shishio, causing the lion to step back a bit. Like hell I'm gonna give up. And neither will Shishio-sama. The golden lion nodded in agreement before charging at Gajira. His razor-sharp claws lengthened by a few inches and he slashed at Gajira's body. But the kaiju's scales were quite durable and sparks flew from the friction between claws and scales. Gajira took the opportunity to lash out with a tail strike and knocked Shishio to the side before using his clawed hands to slash at Shishio. However, Shishio's armor did well to protect him, but a thin gray line showed that Gajira's claws were capable of scratching the armor. A blast of green fire followed afterwards, but Shishio jumped out of the way and tackled the kaiju, sending it stumbling backwards. Powerful slashes with his claws sent Gajira into the defensive as the reptilian beast's scales, despite being near impenetrable, could only take so much damage. Hence why Naruto's barrage of Odama Raisengans in Training Ground 666 had managed to wound it. The golden-eyed reptile roared and punched Shishio in the face, but Shishio countered and slashed at Gajira's throat and preventing it from screaming out in pain as it had its throat temporarily constricted as its flesh was grazed, finally managing to get through to the flesh beneath. Shishio then turned and lashed out with a mule kick and hit Gajira in the stomach. Gajira fell to the ground, Naruto holding on to the spines of his summon to prevent himself from falling. Shishio then pounced on Gajira and began to bite and scratch at his opponent. Finish him, Shishio-sama! Megumi cheered on her boss summoning. The audience watched, literally on the edge of their seats as Shishio continued to attack Gajira, sparks flying from the clash against the monster's durable scales. Shishio then saw one of its slashes had gotten through and a thin line of emerald liquid bled from Gajira's left shoulder to its left pectoral. Seeing the opportunity, the lion boss continued to slash, causing more lines of green blood to blow from the reptile. Though the blood loss was hardly anything to be worried about, it was obvious they were quite painful from Gajira's roars of agony. With a bestial roar, Shishio clamped its jaws down on Gajira's shoulder and tasted blood. Gajira snarled as it raised its right arm and began bashing away at Shishio's skull, trying to free its shoulder from Shishio's iron-like grip. Shishio clamped down even harder, and the kaiju roared in pain. Gajira's eyes then shone as a flash of green traveled up its spines. Opening its jaws, Gajira turned and let loose a mighty fire blast. Shishio roared in agony as the flames washed over his body, forcing him off of the kaiju's body in an attempt to protect both his summoner and himself. Megumi hid behind a plate of Shishio's armor which was able to resist high temperature, But even she could feel the intense heat of Gajira's flames, and she was sweating profusely as a result. What the hell is this thing? Megumi and Shishio thought as Gajira slammed a brutal tail strike to Shishio's body and sent the feline through the air. Shishio crashed into the ground and was about to rise to his feet once more, only to see Gajira charging forth. Gajira leaped and flipped in midair, an action that had Naruto wailing in fright of falling and having to use chakra to keep atop the beast, and slammed down on the gargantuan lion. The golden-furred lion released a roar of pain as the armor on its back bore a large dent, and some of his ribs were broken too. "Shishio-sama!" Megumi cried out as she climbed out of the armor. Her eyes widened as a shadow washed over her form, and she looked up in fear as the golden-eyed kaiju watched down. Gajira then raised a single foot and planted it down on Shishio's down form before releasing a roar to the heavens along with a blast of green fire. "I apologize for my failure, Megumi," Shishio said. No, it's okay. You were great, it's just that this time our opponent was much stronger than us," Megumi said as she looked at Naruto and Gajira release their cries of victory. Shishio nodded and Gajira looked down at him as if challenging the lion boss to try and fight it off. However, the lion merely gave a nod of acknowledgement and surrendered to his opponent. Gajira gave a nod of its own before lifting its foot off of the golden feline. "I expect a rematch with you." Gajira responded to the challenge with a snort of flames and a toothy grin. Shishio then vanished in a plume of smoke and Megumi fell to her knees. There was silence throughout the stadium before the proctor released an audible gulp that seemed to echo throughout the stadium. With a shaking arm, the proctor pointed at Naruto. "SHSH Shaosha, you Uzumaki Naruto." There were quite a large number of clapping and cheering, but people were still in too much shock as it was revealed that a majority of the audience was just sitting there with their eyes wide and jaws agape. Gajira allowed Naruto to jump into the palm of its forelimb and grinned at its summoner. "Well done, Gajira. Like I said, you're one badass motherfucker no one wants to mess with." Naruto congratulated him. The kaiju released a few growls and a roar in response. "He says he thanks you for allowing him to fight, and also for aiding him in finally being outside of that caged land." Kamina translated. "I assume the caged land is the demon's hunting ground." "Oh, well, you're welcome then, buddy. Now go on, return to the hunting grounds." The kaiju seemed to frown as it released a soft, lengthy roar in reply. "Gajira wishes to know why he cannot simply stay here, and if he does return, he wishes to know if you will still be willing to summon him to aid you in battle." "Damn, Kamina, you get all that from a single roar?" "I'll admit, the language is a rather odd one, especially this ancient dialect that the kaiju were known to use, but it's not anything I can't handle." "Well," Naruto returned his attention to Gajira, "the reason you can't stay is because the people, well, they're terrified of you and they're scared as fuck." Gajira looked around at the audience, and sweat dropped when he saw the entire stadium flinch at his gaze, even the three Kage, the hidden ANBU and Jiraiya. "And don't worry about a thing, if you return back to the demon's hunting ground, I promise." Naruto patted Gajira's snout. "I promise, I will summon you to aid me in some of my big fights. I mean, I do have a toad summoning contract after all, and they might hurt me for knowing I have you to fight with me too." Naruto's explanation seemed to satisfy the kaiju as Gajira rested Naruto on the ground gently before giving one last roar before vanishing in a cloud of smoke. "Damn, that roar sounds so badass." "Mine sounds better," Kurama said, causing both Kamina and Naruto to sweat drop at the kitsune's comment. Naruto shook his head before he heard footsteps come along towards his way. Taking notice, he looked up to see Megumi walk towards him. His eyes were calm, his body language hidden enough to make her notice his caution. Once she came close enough, the two stared at each other, eyes focused upon each other like two territorial predators claiming their mark on the land. It wasn't until her body relaxed, her narrowed eyes calmed, that she gave a small smile and held out her hand toward him. "I have to say, Uzumaki-san, you are full of surprises. I never expected you to summon the kaiju of Kiri," she said. "Though alone you were a worthy opponent, to make me summon Shishio-sama is a feat only the elite have ever had the opportunity to do." Naruto paused for a moment before he chuckled, grabbing her hand and giving his a firm grip. "Well, I am Konohagakure's most unpredictable shinobi. I would like to keep that title up, you know, he said as he grinned, and call me Naruto, no need to be formal. Megumi raised her eyebrow. She had never met a shinobi quite like him before. Confident in battle, but laid back when not. She smiled at the blonde. He was a very interesting man indeed. Naruto Uzumaki, I'll be sure to remember you and our fine battle as I hope you remember mine. Of course, I wouldn't want to forget a strong opponent either. It just means that if I meet them again, it makes it all worthwhile to see if they got stronger. That's how some bonds of friendship are made. Naruto let go of her hand and took a few steps back. I hope that one day when we face each other it will be as fellow Chunin. Become stronger, Megumi. I'd like to face you and Shishio one day, he said as he jumped onto the balcony and landed where the competitors resided. Friends, Megumi paused, smiling as her cat-like eyes sharpened. A rival to gain above all others. I'll look forward to our next fight, she thought as she followed afterwards. The proctor raised his hand as he spoke out. The next match this round will be Urashima Kito of Kirigakure versus Samui of Kumogakure. Will the competitors please come down? Naruto looked down as he smirked, watching the two carefully with intent. Whoever would win would face him next. Both were good and probably would have gotten better within the month. However, he had an idea on who would win. Theory on this battle, Naruto? Kamina asked. Both are very powerful, especially for being genin no matter what is said. One specialized in nin taijutsu, and his speed is above average. There is not much I can say about his other skills, other than he could be good with ninjutsu and taijutsu alone as well. This Samui girl is good with Raijuu and Kenjutsu. Erokyofu always told me Kenjutsu was a specialty for both Kiri and Kumo shinobi, but after the civil war in Kiri, Kumo took place as the village that held the best shinobi with Kenjutsu skill due to the heavy loss of Kenjutsu users and the 7 swordsmen in Kiri. Naruto thought. So you believe that the girl will win? She seems skilled enough to take the challenge and go past the next round, the Raijuu stated. True, however I don't believe she will. I think Kyuubi knows this as much as I do. As much as he hates to admit it, I could feel him observing the group. Naruto focused upon Kito. Not much can go on with this Kito guy. He and the Kage are the real big game here. They are unpredictable and the knowledge of what their skills could be are limited, not to mention they have this aura on them that cries out for respect. These two are a lot like Neji and Gaara, are probably stronger than Neji in the exams and possibly rivaled Gaara's level. If me and Sasuke were facing them in our first exam, no doubt we would have lost. Naruto saw the match prepare itself as he lowered his eyes. As much as I don't want to underestimate the girl's abilities, I fear that I would have to side with him as the victor. XXXXX. Samui looked upon the black-haired boy. She held a firm grip on the handle of her tanto behind her once the match started. Her cool collective nature on the outside was filled with caution on the inside. Calculating her opponent's skills from the last match, she prepared a plan against his fighting style. His taijutsu mixture with his element is dangerous to face. The amount of speed he bore was immense too. As good as I am with taijutsu, it's best to avoid him with hand-to-hand combat. It's also best if I use kenjutsu and consist of using mid-range jutsu to avoid him from coming closer than 3 meters from me until I come at him with an opening. She jumped back as she grabbed a set of shuriken from her weapon pouch and threw the shuriken at him. The platinum blonde made a hand sign. Shuriken Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, she said as 4 shuriken turned to 100 coming at the onyx-haired shinobi. Kito smirked as he closed his eyes. Seconds from his face the shuriken came. Just as that second passed, about 80 rebounded past him and flew off into different directions in the ring behind him. He opened his eyes once more, giving a wide smirk across his face as he held 10 shuriken in each hand. If I'm not mistaken, these are yours, he said calmly. Samui's eyes widened slightly. His speed with his hands were amazing. She barely caught a glimpse of the movements aside from blur of motion. If you want them back, here, allow me to give you them back in return with a small token of gratitude. He threw the 20 shuriken at her, and quickly made signs as he inhaled air. Katan, Hozenka no Jutsu, he called out as he shot several small fireballs right into the shuriken, boosting their speed as well, superheating the metal so that they were now red hot, literally, allowing them an extra boost of motion towards Samui. Samui took haste, pulling out her tanto as she charged it with lightning chakra. She struck several shuriken coming her way. 2 grazed past her with intense heat. 1 managed to cut into her thigh, releasing the heat into the flesh, causing it to burn. She gritted her teeth slightly at the pain, but endured. She looked up quickly, feeling his signature only to find him mere inches in front of her. Her eyes widened as she could feel the oncoming fist coming close toward her abdomen like it was a second sense. Quickly acting on her instincts, with a little help of her adrenaline and reflexes, she slapped his fist away and leaped back. The Kumo Kunoichi felt a bead of sweat drop upon her face as she looked onward toward her opponent. He was fast. He hadn't shown this kind of speed in his last battle. It just went to show that a lot of his skills were well hidden. How many shinobi in Kirigakure were this versatile in combat after getting past the civil war 4 years ago? Samui frowned. She quickly makes a few hand signs before stabbing her tanto into the ground. Raitun, Jibashi. With that, lightning surged into the ground from the charged blade and launched towards Kito in an instant and shocked his body. The Kiri genin gritted his teeth as he endured the pain, giving a sheer grin of pleasure within moments. Not bad, your jutsu tingles quite a bit, however. He flexed his muscles and quickly lightning discharged from his body and pushed the attack away from him. The chakra sparked briefly around his body before it fell down. Kito rubbed his neck and popped his back. It's not what I thought when fighting a Kumo shinobi, it felt a bit less than what I expected, he said as he smiled, his knuckles popping once they encased themselves into a fist. Samui pulled out her tanto from the ground and charged it with lightning. Raitun, Raijuu. It sparked heavily, barely showing the blade itself. I never expected Kiri to have a strong genin such as yourself. Well, you can thank the war, my family and the Mizukage for that. After the war, our shinobi academy structure was changed, less brutal, but still strict with combat training and tactical uses. My clan helped in making that because we were one of the main front lines of Kiri's rebel forces during the Civil War. Our Kekei Genkai is a form which allows our chakra nature to combine with our fighting style. It's a body enhancement, nothing like what my preliminary opponent's enhancement ability. This is a true nin taijutsu based art, similar to your Yatsuki clan's nin taijutsu, only it comes to us naturally rather than getting all big and buff or branching out with storm release. Kito said. Samui grunted. Now she remembered his name, the Urashima, well known as the clan of the 4 beasts. They have different fighting styles consisting of the 4 sacred beasts from an element they have. And what about the Mizukage? She asked. Oh yeah, I almost totally forgot to add that. Thanks for reminding me, he said coolly. She is my shinobi sensei. Shinji and I graduated at 11, but she kept us back to this year's exams in order to hone our skills. I take it this is your first exam too? She paused, before giving a grunt of agreement. He had 2 whole years to hone his skills, plus he graduated a year younger than the average genin. He is far above the normal standard for any genin. The Mizukage must have worked them to be perfect shinobi this generation has to offer in Kiri. Cool, though I need to be careful now. Samui raised her blade, the glowing saber crackling due to its electrified state as she rushed toward Kito in a burst of a chakra. The blade came down towards him only to be avoided as he moved his body to the left. Her strikes came at him near any weak points that she could hopefully find. Ribs, shoulders, legs, any misstep in which she could predict where his movements would come at by just his muscle movement. Once he left his ribs open, Samui came with a horizontal slash. There! Her blade was so close, coming just mere inches from his ribs before it came to a stop. She paused with shock as his thumb and 2 fingers held the blade with lightning chakra on the tips. Before she could think, pain rushed her body. A painful release of air came out of her mouth before she shifted her head down to look at what caused it. A heavy fist, drilled into her stomach, and with further damage she had been backhanded by the hand that caught her blade. The platinum blonde hit the ground with a heavy thud before she got up. Her breathing was labored and the side of her face immediately turning purple. I couldn't see him. She only had a second to move as he came at her in a burst of speed, dust trailing behind his tracks as he came at her from her right side. Her chakra saber struck his forearm encased with fire. The loud clanging sound could be heard as the blade deflected off his arm. She avoided the blow that hit the ground. She could barely see what were metal arm guards that covered his forearm up to the back of his hand. This is becoming dangerous, my intel was wrong. She blocked a blow in the air from one of his fists. She clashed her tanto against his fist, the blade breaking off the handle and flying past her as the flaming fist introduced itself directly into her sternum. The blow had caused her to hack blood out from her mouth in large wads. Her body flew off the ground as it made a heavy impact before she made a small crater when she landed back on the ground. She winced as she tried to move from the crater. Her shirt tattered, she could feel that a few of her ribs were broken from the blows and the ground impact. She felt around 5, maybe 6 were heavily broken by how badly her breathing was shortened. She looked up to see Kito descending upon her. She made a few hand signs before putting her hands in front of her and closing her eyes. Miscalculated. Urashimaryu, en Bakudan. His flaming fist ignited into a bright crimson color as it hit the ground after a flashing light blasted in front of him and the arena, causing to blind the premises. Shortly after, an explosion of extreme magnitude hit the ground. Once the light had died down, the crowd looked into the area and noticed the scorched ground beneath them. Naruto had noticed a large crater, and outside of it was Samui, who was laying on the ground outside of the large crater with heavy bruising, bleeding from her mouth and forehead. In addition to the burn marks upon her upper arms and clothing, he could tell by the damage she was down. He then looked upon what the crowd was looking at. Kito was standing in the crater unscathed, but his eyes were covered by his hands. The proctor walked towards Kito and looked at the male. Are you alright? Keitan grunted. Yeah, her last attack blinded me is all. I can't see for a while, he said, but thought otherwise. She had a damn trump card. To think she would use Raijuu Teoken even when the result would be her loss. She must have tried to use it to disable me for my next fight. The black-haired Kiri shinobi opened his eyes to feel the pain of the light in his eyes. Covering them once more, he sighed. I will just have to wait for my eyes to get comfortable again. It will take a while, damn bitch. The proctor raised his arm up and shouted, Shou Urashima Kito. The crowd had cheered wildly. The Mizukage smiled while the Raikage groaned in disappointment. Seems I need to make a better training regime for genin in my village, said as he looked at the medical ninja taking Samui away from the arena to the hospital. To think a genius like Samui was beaten. I'll have to talk to Yujito about being more strict on them as well. Don't be too hard on your shinobi, Raikage Dano. It's just my students were prepared for these exams. I didn't allow them to do the last exam until their skills were truly exceptional or to my liking. That boy there is a genius, much like my other student Shinji. His style is very useful against mid-range fighters due to his speed, Mizukage said. Tsunade listened into the conversation and looked up at Jiraiya. Do you think Naruto can handle that? I'm not doubting his skill, but he's going to face a nin taijutsu specialist. The only experience in a taijutsu fight I've heard of was with Niji Hyuga. Jiraiya smirked. Tsunade, that boy is my godson as well as my apprentice. I know his skills. All of his skill sets have vastly changed. What you last saw in his battle, I have no doubt you will see his other arsenal of secrets behind him. Once the young Urashima left the arena, the announcer waved the next two in. The white-haired Kage and a brown-haired shinobi from the sand. The next match is Kage Shinji of Kiri vs Kurono of Suna. Naruto had anticipated this match for a while. He found that this Kurono guy was a puppeteer, but he didn't use his puppet in the last match in the preliminaries and simply used his skills in taijutsu and mid-range genjutsu to deceive his opponents several times. The boy was large for his age and muscular. However, Naruto knew what a Kage was capable of even after fighting one about a year and a half ago. He had heard stories that the Kage clan were rather vicious and battle-hungry shinobi, but Kimimaro wasn't. The dead Kage was calculating, deadly with his attacks, and thought indifferently of his opponents. That made Naruto question if Shinji was anything like Kimimaro or different. It wasn't until within the first 5 minutes of the match that he found that the boy would surpass the dead Kage. It was also the same 5 minutes that he could tell that the reserved nature that he held was just a shell of him hiding his vicious, deadly fighting style. Once the 5 minutes had ended, the battleground was covered with bones and shattered wood. Kurono had laid upon the ground, his right arm completely twisted with a small bone piercing into the palm of his hand. A large bone, identical to the ulna, was pierced into his shoulder. The large boy had many grazes and puncture wounds upon his arms and legs. The fact remained that his puppet was shattered. Bones were on the field with some blood, and the young Shinji Kage, the small pale white-haired boy, had walked out of the arena unscathed. The arena was silent from the assault. What they would have heard by many of the outside foreign shinobi was the fierce battle instincts the boy had and fear of his future development. Kiri shinobi, however, were a different story. They praised the boy's skill as a genius of effort. Naruto didn't pay attention to much of the conversations held by the people around him as he was stuck in thought. "That boy is dangerous, more dangerous than that Kage you faced," Kurama said as his eyes narrowed. "I know, Lee told me that Kimimaro was a dangerous opponent, and that it was Gaara who managed to fight him off mostly through his curse-mark stage." Naruto narrowed his eyes. Kimimaro was trained by Orochimaru for years and was possibly above Jonin level alone. "This guy is smaller in frame, definitely not as tall or experienced, but I'm sure is faster and more precise with his strikes. He's definitely Chunin level, with Jonin level speed and taijutsu. It's strange that he hadn't been promoted even so. What will happen when you manage to face him?" Kamina said. "I'll need to be careful. I have to fight that Kito guy first. So far I think he and I will have a tough time with each other, though I don't think he'll push me to the max. However, Shinji will definitely push me to my normal limits. I'll have to resort to using the Rage arc. I can't afford to use Kurama's chakra in a foreign shinobi territory without attracting attention," Naruto told the two. Then you better do that, Nijen. I don't want you to be defeated by some meddling shinobi from a different country. Especially the one that Saiken and Isabu reside in," Kurama said. "And they are?" "Rokubi and Sanbai. Their presence is outside the village, though I sense that Sanbai is well hidden from afar. The moron always loved playing in water." The two others in Naruto's mind sweat dropped before Naruto disconnected and prepared for the next bout to commence. Omoi stared in at Kuratsuchi and pondered deep thought. This was Sandaime Tsuchikage's granddaughter, meaning he probably didn't slack off her training or anything. He was worried at first before Karui punched him in the back of the head earlier today. Now his thoughts were once more refocused on the situation at hand. She played a key role in the preliminaries. I doubt her skills aren't just for show either. What if she's hiding her true strength like the other guys? What if she's weaker? What if she has some plot in hand to try and dash a rock smacked across his head, causing him to hold his head in pain? "Quit overthinking and fight, you dumbass!" Karui exclaimed, fire burning in her eyes. Omoi shuddered for a brief second, arching back up to only appear calm and collective. She was right. Now was not the time to overthink the situation at hand. He must try and win this. If he doesn't, he will bring shame to Kumo. He will get punched by Karui and get sent to the hospital. Samui will give in the cold shoulder. He dash. "Stop thinking, dumbass!" Karui screamed out. The crowd's sweat dropped as they watched the red-haired kunoichi before inching away from her, something she didn't notice as she was too busy glaring at Omoi. "I'll just shut up now," he thought to himself, pulling out his sword and preparing for the battle at hand. "Hajime." Kuratsuchi made hand signs. "Doton, Tsuchi Bunshin no Jutsu." At that release, 4 clones slowly rose from the earth below and ascended next to the kunoichi from the land of earth, taking the form of her doppelganger. The kunoichi pulled out a kunai, and with he clones rushed out towards her opponent. 2 of the clones came rushing at Omoi, one coming down with an inverted axe kick, the other coming with a mid-roundhouse kick to his back. Omoi could see this coming, moving his body away from the descending kick and charging his blade with a powerful thrust, slicing the clone's head off and turning it back into the earth once more. The other clone came with a barrage of fists that were carefully avoided by the dark-skinned Kumo shinobi. It wasn't until the opening the clone left out that Omoi had obtained an opportunity by cutting off the clone's arm. He looked forward, Kuratsuchi coming close to him as he used his blade to guard him from the kunai strike. Upon that, she had struck with resilient force with her short knife into the blade. Omoi pushed her back with chakra-increased strength, pushing the SD of his blade onto her as she flew back. Kuratsuchi, however, had prepared for this, she pulled out 3 smaller kunai from her pouch with explosive tags wrapped around the ends and threw them at Omo. She quickly made hand signs, preparing for him to move out of the explosive kunai's way. She wasn't going to let him go unscathed. "Katon Enden!" she called out, spewing a giant ball of fire out of her mouth toward the kunai. As it neared Oma and its objective, it enveloped the kunai and quickly ignited the small explosive tags on the blade, causing a shockwave of fire and intense heat to surround the area near Oma. Oma leaped back, though couldn't avoid the shockwave. He flew out of range and hit the wall of the arena. He grunted for a moment before sensing a chakra signal come by as he saw 4 more fireballs come at him. He threw his sword onto the ground before back-flipping on the wall of the arena. He avoided the searing flames and leaped off the wall and then landed on the bottom hilt of his blade, flipping once more as he grabbed it onto his hand and pulled it out of earth. Another fireball came down toward him. He channeled his chakra into his sword and sliced the fireball in half in a horizontal direction. "Kyomoryu, Maikazu Kujiri!" He looked at the kunoichi and rushed at her with amazing speed. Now was his time to attack. He came closer until a shadow above caught his eye. "Kyuso, I forgot about the clones," he thought as he rushed back to avoid the doppelgangers. "Suetun, Mizurappa! Doton, Dori Yuden no Jutsu!" Omo shifted back, avoiding the water jutsu, but being hit by the earth-formed dragon dead-on. He smacked into the ground, groaning in pain as he moved his limbs that were covered by mud and thus made his movements slower. The white-haired, dark-skinned boy looked up to see Kuratsuchi panting slightly. She depleted quite a bit of chakra going on a ninjutsu barrage like that. It was a brash, but smart on her move for her to allow him not to think through strategy. Oma lifted his heavy mud arms, have to strike while she's there, he thought as he made hand signs. "Raitun, John!" he cried out, releasing a large beam of lightning. Kuratsuchi looked at the large beam of light coming towards her, and she made hand signs as fast as possible. One of her clones came next to her as it did identical hand signs. "Doton, Doriahiki!" 2 massive slabs of stone rose from the ground and up in front of them just as soon as the attack came. It pushed right into the 2 slabs of earth, completely shattering one into rubble, the other crumbling down and cracking until it eviscerated the base of the earth. The blast pushed forward as it exploded in front of him. Smoke rose and debris fell. Smoke had died down as the clearing appeared, showing a fallen Kuratsuchi on the ground. Omo had closed his eyes in relief. This battle was finally over. Then he heard a soft clunk which made him slowly open his eyes. Eyes quickly widening as the Kurotoshi in front of his was turning into rubble. "Yantun, Sekijio no Jutsu!" He then noticed the sky darkening behind him. Looking back, he saw a giant glob of gray liquid come down upon him. She substituted her last Tsuchi Bunshin. He quickly summoned his own clone, which pulled his arm and attempted to throw him out of the way from the supplementary attack. However, as the attack came down, a glob of the cement-like liquid covered Omoi's left arm once the clone let go. The clone itself became covered and was solidified by the concrete. Omo panted as he felt his arm become immobilized, stiffened by the concrete. Kuratsuchi came down and slammed upon the concrete statue clone, crushing it. Her right arm was covered by a giant stone-like fist as she narrowed her eyes. "No more games!" she yelled as she rushed toward Oma. "I'm going to finish this now." Omoi grunted as he moved his body, but due to the heavy clothing he could not avoid Kuratsuchi's attack. He would have to try and dodge. Using his concrete layered arm, he would hope the solid mass would break from the impact. He shifted his forearm toward his body in front of the oncoming rock fist, and braced himself for impact. Once the impact came, he felt the shatter of stone and he heard an audible crack emit from his arm. The concrete was destroyed, but he felt the thriving sensation of pain course through his arm. The price of freeing his arm was severe damage, his forearm broken. He skidded back, keeping his arm in front of him. The bone had protruded slightly out of the skin and flesh, and the color of his skin now sported a tinge of purple. He grunted as he moved his arm to his side. He narrowed his eyes, his eyelids droopy as he stared at Kuratsuchi. His sword remained in his right hand. "Seems like this is it," He thought seeing Katsuchi come toward him with her rock fist intact. He ran toward her, as he gripped his blade handle firmly. I may not be able to make it to the next round, but dash. The two ran into each other with a burst of speed, and the sound of impact was heard through the arena. Everyone paused as they looked upon the scene. Katsuchi didn't move a muscle. A low groan came out of her mouth as she fell to the ground. Blood ran down the back of her head as she was hit in the back of the head heavily by the blunt edge of Oma's blade. Oma would have stood victorious until he too slowly fell. The large bruising in his abdomen showed a fractured rib cage. I can at least take her down with me, was the last thought that crossed his mind before passing out and hitting the ground. The proctor rushed toward them, checking their pulse and seeing if either were conscious. Once he raised his hand, he spoke. Both Katsuchi and Omo are unconscious, therefore either participants will not pass to the next round. This match is a draw, he announced. A low groan of disappointment entered the arena with some chatting of the amazing fight. Naruto, however, was now focused, though with eyes closed. Now, he opened his eyes, looking upon Kito and then at Shinji. It's just us three left. Chapter 7. The three combatants had now stood within the arena once more. All three focused on the proctor as he was talking through the reviewing matchup. Of course, this Chunin exam was in favor of one specific character in this final exam. Sadly for Naruto, it wasn't him. As you now know, the three of you are now the only ones remaining in this tournament. Usually I would announce that this match would be a triple battle between the three of you. However, due to the changes in our exams, the last person who fought last round will go to the last round of the finals with a bye. The proctor looked over to Naruto and Kito, which means that the two of you will fight. Whoever wins will go to the next round to face Kage Shinji. Kito simply shrugged while Naruto closed his eyes and focused on the current matchup. This wouldn't go into his favor, quite a back step in his original plan of having breaks during fights to reorganize his battle tactics for later matches. His eyes appeared under his hood, the wild oceans within them had poured out with serene calmness and confidence. I have a question, Naruto stated as he looked over to the proctor. Whoever wins this match, will they get a chance to respite before the next matchup? The proctor looked over toward the hooded blonde and smirked. The Mizukage had requested that the winner of the coming match will have a 30-minute interval to recuperate. Any longer and the victory will go over to the opponent of the next round. Naruto looked over to Shinji in the corner of his eye. Of course he would be the most outcome victor if that were the case. If either Naruto or Kito came out of this match, it wouldn't be unscathed. Though the difference would be if he would win the next round, he wouldn't have to worry. Due to Kurama, his wounds would heal and any chakra lost would be replenished. Not that Naruto had to worry about chakra, he was monster with stamina and endurance alone. Good, it wouldn't be fair for the audience to see a battle that would end in a short and unimpressive manner. The blonde lowered his eyes. It will also give me time to reorganize my tactics. As much as tactics will help you, I don't think that will be easy. Planning takes time that you don't have, the Raijuu said. Sometimes you will just need to go with pure instinct. That thunder beast is right, Gaki. You just got your smarts a while back, but you're not like that foolish Nara friend of yours. I think you just need to improvise and use anything you have. Kurama chuckled. Who knows, these two fights might bring out the best in you. Of course I could always be wrong, the fox said. True, I may not be as smart as the lazy ass, but I know my way around a good fight. Naruto clenched his fist before he let his hand relax. Besides, I've come this far. I won't stop until I become the last man standing in this exam. If I'm going to be pushed to my limit, then I'll surpass it, and push my opponents to their limit, he said to them as he grinned. Kamina looked over to the Uzumaki through the recesses of said Uzumaki's mindscape. You are a resilient one, much like him and the many before. Now if Uzumaki Naruto and Urashima Kito will please stay here for their match, then we can begin. Kage Shinji, please go back to the balcony until further instruction. The Kage grunted as he jumped over to the balcony with a boost of chakra. The instructor looked over at Naruto and Kito. Now you two, get onto the opposite sides of the field. The two shinobi looked over to each other, their gazes never separated as they walked across opposite sides. Each step they took felt like time slowed to Naruto. He could feel the wave of excitement course through his opponent and himself. Said waves were battling each other in the moment of preparation as they both were anxious to meet hand to hand. Naruto had not felt anything like this, not even with his so-called best friend. With Sasuke it was a battle of jealousy and pride, anger and envy clashing into one another. This was just for the sheer fun of it. Naruto got into his natural taijutsu stance, keeping in that position as his opponent made a strong fist stance. Naruto's eyes intensified as they were like a raging ocean amongst the stormy weather. He was prepared for the march of war between his opponent and himself. "I've been waiting for this," he heard his opponent say. He looked into his red eyes and smirked as his opponent continued. "You were the most interesting out of all the competitors here aside from Shinji. I have to say that even during your fight in these finals I knew that you were going to be a worthy opponent, an opponent that I can break before facing my greatest rival," he said. This guy sounds so much like Lee when it comes to him and Neji. Our favorite blonde thought. It was a good fight. I had to put some effort into it, though my other skills haven't shown yet. Naruto gave a fox-like smile seeing your last fight. I wonder if you have what it takes to handle me, he said jokingly. Kito smirked as his chakra flared up, his hair flowing up slightly. We'll have to see, now won't we, he said, tightening his fists. Uzumaki Naruto of Konoha versus Urashima Kito of Kiri. Hajime, the proctor shouted. In that split second, all one could see was a pair of blurred shadows as the two clashed into each other. A shockwave pushed dirt behind them back as both shinobi held their ground. Their arms began to shake as their muscles tightened, aiming to produce a greater amount of force for dominance. Finally, they pushed away from each other, skidding backwards as they landed. Kito had made the first move by speeding forth, going with a low punch to the stomach, though Naruto grabbed the black-haired shinobi's wrist tightly, hooking his arm under Kito's armpit and throwing the brunette over his head. Kito flipped into the air a couple times as he landed on his feet with ease and took notice as Naruto was instantly in front of him. A fist came toward his sternum, but Kito slapped it away with ease toward the ground. The momentum of the blonde's body going downward made the Kiri shinobi gaze into the face of opportunity, as he moved his leg upward to kick the blonde in the abdomen. Naruto, however, moved quickly as he grabbed Kito's leg. The blonde placed a now open hand onto the ground and twirled his body with speed, moving his leg up to commence a rising roundhouse. Kito looked through the corner of his eyes, seeing the fast-moving kick. He moved his chin, barely avoiding the blow as his cheekbone received a painful graze from the heel of Naruto's shoe. A small cut on his cheek was the result. The red-eyed male grabbed Naruto's ankle, giving it a powerful pull as he lifted Naruto off his feet and spun the blonde around. He had begun to spin faster before a kick came to his face from Naruto's other foot. The brunette had let go of the blonde's ankle, sending him flying somewhat and hitting the ground before allowing the blonde to jump back up with ease. He seems to be off his A-game, or is really testing me, Naruto thought as with a burst of speed, he launched a right hook into Kito's stomach, allowing for the wind to get knocked out of him. Naruto then came with a straight left punch to the face, twisting his body at the hip to give his arm more momentum and reach. He then spun on his heel, building up the momentum to release a right hook which nailed the Kiri shinobi in the ribs before dropping low and channeling the force through his legs, performing a devastating uppercut that scored against the teen's sternum. Naruto quickly saw his opponent's pained expression and took advantage of it so as to cause further damage as he aimed a strong haymaker directly into the black-haired boy's temple and then a right hook into the face once more before setting a powerful headbutt to the nose. The Kiri shinobi skidded back a few feet away before coming to a stop. The young Urashima's face twitched in pain. "Seems that he has a glass face," Naruto said. "Don't you mean jaw?" Kurama asked. "Whatever." Naruto's eyes narrowed at the bijou as he got back into his fighting stance. He knew well enough that this fight was far from over. Kito's body stopped twitching as he instantly shifted his head to face his opponent. His eyes closed as he hummed and popped his neck, stretching his body. The blows that had received seemed to have faded and not a mark, aside from the cut given earlier, had remained on his pale white skin. He gave a chuckle before opening his eyes to look directly at the blonde. "Thanks for the head knocking, I'd been having to pop my neck for the last week, but couldn't due to cramp. He flexed his muscles. That was nice of you, but let me return the favor. An instant later Naruto felt saliva come out of his mouth as he felt the impact of the punch in his abdominal area. He quivered for a bit, looking at Kito, who smirked. It was only at that moment that Naruto gave a grin before he exploded into smoke, slightly surprising Kito. A clone? Then the sky darkened briefly above him. He quickly shifted his body to the right, and saw a flash of color out of his peripheral vision. Reacting quickly, he reached out and found his hand gripping Naruto's wrist as it was the blonde's fist that was coming down upon him. He then snaked his right arm underneath the blonde's assaulting limb before tightening his grip on his wrist. He pushed downwards as Naruto's arm was now locked in place by the black-haired boy's right arm while also being forced downward by the left. This resulted in Naruto's arm being caught in an arm lock which flexed his shoulder and arm muscles quite painfully. Naruto gritted his teeth as he attempted to push back against his opponent's applied force. "How did you make a clone so fast?" Kito asked. "A whole lot of training, that's what. I've been practicing on mastering Kage Bunshin without the use of hand signs and chakra use for almost a week during training. The rest of the weeks I did some special training of my own," Naruto said as he smirked. Kito nodded before he continued to force Naruto's arm into a hyperextended state, but the blonde quickly forced chakra into his muscles and managed to free his arm. However, Kito adapted quicker than Naruto would have ever thought possible, and he found his opponent had gripped his arm with both hands, having spun around so that his back was now facing him, and jammed his hip against Naruto's own so as to provide the necessary leverage to throw Naruto over his shoulder. As Naruto was slammed into the ground, Kito straddled him and then punched the blonde in the face only for him to explode into smoke once more, which surprised him. However, more smoke clouded his vision as a few more clones appeared from the earth, having used Henji no Jutsu to disguise themselves as rocks and patches of grass. One clone punched Kito in the face, sending him skidding backwards before 3 more clones crashed their legs into him at different intervals. "Seiryuu!" They cried out their respective syllables when they made contact. The crowd and Kito himself suddenly found themselves gaping in awe as a storm of blondes descended from all available angles, their fists reared back. "Naruto Naizen Randan!" cried out the clones. Keiton scoffed before he grinned. "This is what I have been waiting for," he thought. His grin widened as the clones neared him, but as they did, Kito's body flared with chakra and orange flames formed around his arms and legs. "Urashima Ryu, Katon Engen!" With a flurry of fast-moving fists of fire, he shot rapid-moving fireballs directly upon the clones, dispersing them one by one at alarming rates. He then pushed his feet off on the few remaining clones, burning them with his flaming legs, and ascended in the air. The original Naruto was all that was left of the clone army, and the blue-eyed boy could only watch as Kito leaped above him and raised his ignited foot. A stream of orange flame followed behind it as he brought down the foot in the form of a blazing axe kick. Naruto looked upon his opponent coming down. Crossing his arms in a defensive position, he blocked the kick, though the searing heat burned right through his jacket sleeves, leaving small singed marks upon his skin as was pushed down towards the ground by the kick. He landed on one knee, his opponent coming afterwards with flaming fists at the ready. Kito landed away from Naruto when he landed in a crouched position. Once his knuckles touched the land below, the earth shook. Cracks branched forth from the point of contact as the earth had split with plumes of fire shooting out. "Katon, Goken!" he roared out as the flames rose up 20 feet around the area, rocks exploding out of the ground and falling back towards earth as miniature meteors from the heavens. "Kyuso!" the blonde thought as flames surrounded him and rose to a maximum height of 20 feet into the air before smoke and debris caused said flames to be nothing more than small lights in the ground. The arena center was now a broken crater of approximately 1 meter in depth. The lush green grass was now burnt and blackened by the flames. Kito looked upon Naruto and smirked, seeing fire-natured chakra around the boy in minor parts of his body. However, Naruto's body was still singed, burnt, and hot from the flames. Overall, though, he seemed unaffected. So he too has a fire chakra nature, Kito thought as he made hand signs. "Katon, Gakkaku no Jutsu!" the black-haired boy cried out, shooting out a large concentrated ball of fire upon the blonde. Naruto saw the oncoming spheroid of flame and made his own hand signs as he inhaled. Katon quickly exhaling, he spouted a thick stream of fire which had broadened out into a giant wall of streaming fire. Goka Mekyaku! Quickly, the wall made an impact and connected to the fireball. The two jutsus were fighting over dominance from both opposite forces who were exuding more chakra into their attacks. The stream of flames from Naruto's jutsu, however, had begun to make its power known as it surrounded the fireball and consumed it, moving in the direction of the member of the Urashima clan. Kito smirked as he charged more Katon chakra into his fist as he had thrust it forward. Katon, Goken! The concentrated strong fist pushed fire chakra forward like a missile and shot it directly into the oncoming stream. The jutsu had crashed against Naruto's own with titanic force, enough to push Naruto back slightly. Naruto pushed more chakra forward. He had to stop at some point. He had not had complete mastery over this technique. It was quickly becoming overpowered by the Nin Taijutsu specialist's technique. Naruto frowned and summoned a clone as it had begun to make hand signs at fast speeds and performed a jutsu. Katon, Guryoka no Jutsu! It spat out two dragon heads from its mouth, and the flaming heads rose into the air before descending down toward the Taijutsu specialist of Kiri. Kito put more force into his technique as he had forced the flaming stream wall to die out. He moved up as he jumped at great heights near the two dragon heads. "You're going to have to take me more seriously, Uzumaki!" he yelled out. He then channeled fire chakra into his legs and flames burst forth. However, these flames took on a light shade of blue. "Here, these are yours!" Kito roared as he brought his legs back and lashed out with powerful kicks. To Naruto's surprise, the flames of his own jutsu appeared as if they were solid as Kito's chakra overpowered his own. The result was Kito kicking the dragon heads back towards Naruto with great power. Naruto stared in shock at the ease of the kicks that had turned the draconian fireballs back on their user. Naruto's clone had swung the blonde off the ground and into the air before the fireballs came down upon the earth, causing an explosion. A small mushroom cloud formed as fire and rock blasted upward. Naruto grunted, feeling the intense blast wave blow past him, pushing him higher. Sensing a burst of chakra, however, made him turn to see Kito right next to him, using his fire chakra to shoot him off like a rocket towards Naruto. A burning fist came down toward Naruto. The Kyubi Jinchuriki could only cross his arms over his face and torso as a punch connected. The punch itself was intense, and he could see in that one punch was in truth 10 punches directly into his forearms. Naruto was pushed down, descending towards the ground before Kito appeared behind him and rammed a knee into his back, sending him upward a few feet before his hand was caught firmly by one of Kito's burning hands. Naruto looked at Kito, whose hands were on both ankles. A smile came across his face as flames ignited around his body before two more set of arms that were formed within the flames. Naruto released a scream that sounded like bloody murder as his bare flesh was being burned. Urashima Ryu, Ajura no Enkin! Kito pulled Naruto over one of his two sets of fire hands, grabbing Naruto by his wrists and ankles, the hands burning the boy's skin around the area slowly as they were gripping tightly upon him. Naruto struggled to free himself, to get away from the cause of his burning flesh, but to no avail. The two had descended towards earth with great speed before crashing in the ground, with Naruto as the cushion. Naruto coughed heavily, spitting out saliva and blood as he grunted in pain. He looked at his opponent, who held a vicious excitement in his eyes. The worst, however, had come when Naruto felt an impact with his ribs which made him gasp out air. Another series of painful blows upon his chest came down onto him as his opponent did not waste a minute. With each minute, Naruto wanted to scream, but only silence escaped his throat. Blood dribbling down his lip as he could feel muscles being tenderized and bones being bruised and meshed from the blows. Naruto could tell his body was trying its best to hold on, but the pain of the fiery punches was making his conscious strain from the continuous pain. His eyes dazed out as he grew to an unconscious state, and slowly felt the world coming to darkness in his eyes. It wasn't until a shock in his mind awoke his state of mind. "What?" "Quit wasting your time, Naruto, this shouldn't hold you down," Kamina said, growling. Naruto felt the punches continue before anger and instincts began to build up. Adrenaline was pumping to the point where the punches didn't feel like punches at all, just mild pokes. Naruto closed his eyes and chakra into his arms and legs. His eyes became cold ice blue, a ring of violet outlining his eyes, and within the oncoming punch Naruto released a burst of lightning chakra electrifying Kito's body and chakra system. The chakra was enough for the brunette to loosen his grip on the blonde. Taking this opportunity, Naruto quickly shifted his arms out to free his hands. His hands moved quickly, several quick punches ramming near the nervous points of Kito's chest around the lungs and heart area. The punches themselves held a mixture of lightning and wind chakra which amplified the blows and set the Kiri Genin back. The blonde Jinchuriki shifted his feet up into Kito's sternum, pushing with enough force to send the brunette into the air. Keiton, once he landed on the ground, he tumbled, but managed to right himself, getting on one knee once he came to a stop. As he was coughing out some blood, Red Eyes looked at Naruto with weary stare, hand pressed upon his body as he could feel numbness and slight muscle spasms on his chest. What the hell was that? Kito thought, watching the blonde get up, throwing his burnt jacket to show his full features. A face no longer holding large quantities of round flesh, hair somewhat longer than what he had previously seen the boy have. The boy had a black and teal tank top on with black gloves. What held Kito's attention was not the features that had changed, but Naruto's eyes that held a cold, serious nature to them. Naruto shifted, adjusting his posture to put himself in a stance that was truly identical to Wing Chun, though completely foreign to all shinobi in the vicinity. Wind chakra had now channeled around Naruto's hands. It wasn't wild and sharp, it held a smooth and gentle, but fierce feature to it. Naruto stood patiently for his opponent, watching him carefully like a hunter waiting for the kill. The look upon the blonde's face had agitated the brunette. A rage slowly built inside the male. His 6 fiery arms ignited into such intense heat, the degree would be about 1,000 degrees. Short bursts of speed and the black-haired shinobi came, shooting a barrage of fireballs coming out of the flaming fists. Naruto shifted his feet once the flames drew near. He came onto the offensive, slapping the hot flames away with ease as he aimed them in different sections and different directions of the arena. Some had hit the walls while others landed on the ground. Naruto never paid attention to the fall of flames as his eyes remained locked onto Kito. Once he saw Kito prepare his move once more, Naruto moved his hand up to show a seal. That exact seal glowed upon Kito's chest. Fuin! Once the seal shone, a pulse of chakra was released and everything had stopped. Silence fell upon the world as the crowd watched as Kito seemed to freeze in his movements. Kito coughed up a glob of blood before looking at Naruto with shock. His vision seemed to blur before he fell, forming a small dust cloud. The young Urashima was struggling to get up, teeth gritting in effort. Keiton ground his teeth in anger as he arched his back up, slowly getting onto his knees as he was breathing heavily. Sweat dripped from his brow from just the strain of getting up. "What did you do?" he growled, getting slowly on one foot. Naruto smirked as he rushed toward Kito, and he rammed his palms into Kito's sternum. A fist followed, quickly hitting his heart, then another segment of punches into his shoulders and onto his face into a series of repetitive blows. The blonde quickly shifted his leg behind Kito's, pulling his leg back to allow the brunette to suddenly find himself in free fall. Though the blonde didn't give the genin a chance to even touch down as he thrust a palm into the sternum one more time as a burst of wind pushed the heir of the Urashima clan into the wall with blunt force. Once the ninja smacked into the wall, he made it crack in several places before sliding down it. "I placed a gravity seal on your chest during the time you had pinned me down. I couldn't do so in the beginning of the match because I know you like to be brutal with your fighting as seen within the first 2 matches previous to ours. It was only until now that I was able to find some spots where your defenses were weak." The blonde closed his eyes. "You should give up now. That gravity seal makes the gravity that's holding you down 5 times greater than regular gravity. It does not matter how physically strong you are right now, you won't be able to get up a second time with the blows you received. And you should shut up, you fool!" Kito yelled, getting the blonde to look at him. "If you think this will hold me down, you are sorely mistaken." "Then prove me wrong," Naruto simply stated to the brunette. He saw at that moment that the boy's eyes turned from red to completely white. The flames had died around his body, his extra arms made of fire gone. Naruto looked upon the scene before he felt the rising levels of chakra and heat building. His eyes slightly widened as he took upon seeing Kito's skin turning crimson. Flames erupted upon the boy, etching into his skin and hair, but were heavily concentrated upon his forearms, hands, legs, and shoulders. The boy gave a wild roar as his muscles bulged and tensed. The clothes on his upper body completely burned off his body due to the flames. The boy rose up to his feet. The sealing mark on his body remained intact, though it seemed to have no effect on Kito's body. The black-haired boy grinned viciously as he closed his fists. Urashima Hijitsu, Ajura no Ikari, Kito said. The strongest form in my fighting arsenal, the flames on my body consist of pure fire chakra, temperatures exceeding 1,500 degrees. Naruto felt the intense heat and covered his face. He couldn't believe that his body could release such temperatures. He was like a miniature sun in the arena, and he figured the shinobi could take the heat, but the civilians wouldn't be able to last even 2 minutes. Is he insane? He'll kill more people who are watching than killing me. To think that this boy was from the clan that held rage as a power source to ignite his flames. This is truly the definition of the god of wrath's power, Kamina said. However, there is a risk to using this form. Naruto looked over to Kito and sensed his chakra levels. He's opened 4 of the 8 gates, but his chakra is supplied with fire chakra instead of regular chakra. He's going to burn his chakra system and become a human time bomb of fire. Naruto, you're going to use that move. That technique should be able to counter his form. Hurry now! Kamina roared out. Kito saw Naruto come close and he chuckled as he rushed toward the blonde. You are stupid, Tio, come this close to me. You moron, you'll be incinerated the first chance I get to hit you. That's what you think, Tiami. I'll stop you before everyone becomes fried human flambe. Naruto roared out as he avoided the oncoming fist of an angry genin. He circled around, avoiding the heated punches. Naruto looked over in the corner of his eyes, seeing people already passing out. Naruto grit his teeth as he moved at a fast pace in a spiraling motion until he reached the center. His fist had slowly begun to be enveloped by chakra and wind elements alone. When cold and hot air intertwine and mix, they become a deadly force. Naruto ducked his head as he raised his fist up and punched Kito in the chin. And when the dragon descends to the ground, it claims its prey and rises to the heavens with a mighty roar. Hirya Hijitsu, Hirya Shoten Ha! Naruto roared out. The air quickly pressurized as wind exploded from the blonde's fist, creating a large tornado that was sending Kito higher into the sky as he was hit with tremendous force and was being torn upon the tornado's firm power. He rose higher and higher before the tornado slowly died down. Kito, whose jutsu died down, had slowly begun descending, picking up speed. Within 2 minutes, he had reached the ring and was about to hit the ground. He opened one single eye before it widened from shock to see Naruto in front of him with his arm arched back. Kyuso, this guy. The chakra-powered punch slammed directly into the fire user's stomach. Kito coughed up blood as Naruto's fist twisted, digging into his stomach and sending him flying across the arena and crashing him to the wall, breaking the stone upon contact. Is good. He finished his thought, losing consciousness as he plummeted to the ground, motionless. Naruto panted as he held his arm, his eyes closed with relief and strain. Kyuso, my muscles are torn up, he thought. Hold on, Gaki, I'll heal your wounds and arm. It'll take a while though, Kurama said as he started to pump his chakra into Naruto's chakra system. Arigato, Kyubi. Naruto opened his eyes to stare at the proctor who checked out Kito, standing up to raise his hand. Kito is no longer in any condition to fight Shouja Uzumaki. Naruto, the proctor announced. The crowd that was finally relieved had cheered with enthusiasm and excitement for the fight. Shinji stared upon the young Uzumaki with crimson eyes and smirked. Interesting, he said to himself, finding hope that he will have an opponent that was worth fighting aside from Kito. You might be the perfect opponent to face. Mei looked upon the fallen Urashima and frowned slightly. He used the technique I told him not to use, but to lose in that state is a shocking feat in itself. She turned her eyes upon Naruto and smiled lustfully, but he is a perfect specimen and he has quite a bit of talent. I wonder how he will manage the final stand against Shinji. I frowned. That boy will be dangerous in the future. Jiraiya, what was that? Tsunade asked. It was a jutsu like I have never seen before. That's because it's not a jutsu, or at least not fully, the sage stated. That was a technique that Naruto himself learned from a taijutsu clan that died out some time ago, the Sotomo clan that died out in the First Shinobi World War. It's a long story in how he knows it, but that technique was one of the Sotomo clan's 4 strongest secret techniques. Strongest techniques? The blonde woman asked, receiving a nod for the white-haired man. Naruto hasn't mastered the taijutsu style, but that technique he told me, known as the Hiryu Hijitsu, Hiryu Shoten-ha, consists of using his chakra and using the air current to his advantage, in which he is able to use his wind manipulation to alter the flow of the air currents in a spiraling motion. A trick he already is accustomed to do to his work with the Rasengan, and thus when he makes contact with his opponent it gives his attack a bit of extra force as the spiraling air currents vault the opponent into the air, accompanied by a tornado of chakra and wind to form. Jiraiya stated. While it should have done more damage, I think Naruto was trying to cool the flames on the boy's body down enough to be less damaging. He wouldn't have been able to control the tornado if it was too big. A taijutsu of an extinct clan, a style possibly on par with Meidogai's taijutsu. Simply amazing, thought Tsunade, seeing the blonde walking away to go to be on his small recess before fighting the last fight. XXXXXX. Once the medical nin had healed most of his wounds, Naruto stretched his body as he closed his eyes to relax on the bed. It wasn't until he heard the sound of crutches and footsteps that he turned his head to find Kito looking down at him. Naruto sighed as he turned away, closing his eyes. Can I help you? You got strength, you are the only other person I have lost to, be proud of that, Kito said in a snarky tone. Oh yeah, well, be glad all you're in is crutches and a cast. I would have crippled you completely if I wanted to. However, I was thinking of the welfare of the people in the stands. Naruto narrowed his eyes as he turned to glare at Kito. Do you know the risk you almost put yourself and everyone else in? Of course, I needed to win, even if Mei-sama told me to not use that technique. Even if I combust, if I know I make it to the next round and win, then I will have no regrets. Kito frowned sadly. I didn't make it to the final round now, did I? Naruto paused as he looked over to the male, curiosity egging at him as he gave in and decided to speak. Do you have some sort of vendetta against that Kage? Kito scoffed. No, it's more of a rivalry. Shinji is my other teammate, and as well as the only other genin of our caliber to beat me, he said. His attitude is calm, but when he fights it's like fighting a beast. He's unpredictable and is nothing like the other Kage I've heard about before their downfall. He's excellent with his bones, I suspect, uses most parts of his body as a weapon or some sort of defense. Naruto asked. Yeah, his variety of bone usage is unique too. Kito smirked. I'm giving you advice, don't underestimate him. He's more dangerous than I am when I'm not using that power amplifier. He can be sadistic and smart about where to hit. Naruto shrugged. I'm not worried. If he was anything like the Kage I've faced before, then I know I should take precaution. Kito froze. Another Kage lives? No, he died from his illness in battle while facing a friend of mine, a shinobi from Suna called Sabaka no Gara. Naruto smirked. The battle ended in a stalemate, but if that guy didn't have the disease, Gara told me he would have died that day. Kimimaro was his name. Kito grew pale at the hearing of the name. Naruto raised a brow and looked at the brunette curiously. I take it you've heard his name before? Yeah, only once during the Civil War. We stole a file that held a number of Kage in the clan who had died. When Mei-sama told Shinji that he had a brother before him when his mother died. His body was never found, but his mother kept crying out for his name even during her death. Oh shit, Naruto thought, don't tell me. Kimimaro was Shinji's older brother of 4 years. Shinji and I were only 2 when the bloodline purge began. Kito sighed. Shinji doesn't express himself often, but he was determined to find his brother once the Civil War ended, and that was a year ago. The same time Kimimaro died. Naruto narrowed his eyes. That is a coincidence. So the advice, was that it? The blonde asked. Yeah, there is nothing much I can really say. Kito turned as he walked off. I would say good luck, but you might not need it. The brunette waved his hand in goodbye as he hobbled away from Naruto's view. Kamina looked at Naruto. Tell me, you're not going to tell Shinji about his brother and exploit his anger, and use that to my advantage? Naruto smirked. If necessary, yes, I will. I wasn't going to say that. I was more on the lines of going to say tell him after the match. The blonde's sweat dropped from that. I say tell him while in the match. You always can't be honorable and play fair in your fights. You're a shinobi, morals will have to be cast away in order to accomplish something. Kurama said. It is better this way for both sides. You win the exams overall. Shinji will learn of his brother's fate and come to accept being the last of his bloodline. Naruto went silent, closing his eyes in deep thought, and frowned. It wasn't his nature to play dirty, but even he would have to one day. Being a shinobi meant to cheat through fights in order to be victorious and fight another day. He opened his eyes, which held a sense of calmness to them, and at the same time had sympathy for them. All right. XXXX. The final competitors were standing in the center of the arena, the proctor already calling the match to begin. Naruto held his nodachi firmly by its sheath. Sapphire eyes zeroed in on his opponent, seeing the resemblance of the deceased Kage that he had fought before, only that the boy in front of him had gray eyes and his hair was shorter and more wilder. Naruto couldn't think of anything else other than the fact that this boy would one day surpass Kimimaro if he had not yet exceeded his level of skill already. The blonde Jinchuriki quickly took notice of the bone blade form from the ulna prodding out of the boy's palm. Seeing it being pulled out gave a vivid flashback. Naruto himself proceeded to pull out the short sword out of the elegant sheath made of wood and fine leather. Shinji had made the first move, his speed surpassing even the speed of Rock Lee. His blade of bone was made to aim at any vital points toward his opposing enemy. Though, he wasn't the only one on the move as Naruto too rushed forward. The two passed each other in a blur, stopping in a split moment as they were now only 3 feet away from each other. Neither one had made a move until the sound of droplets hit the ground. Soon rain had begun to pour onto the ground. As the heavens released their precipitation, they were accompanied with small droplets of blood which came from both teenagers' arms. By instinct, the two had moved in synchronization, clashing weapon with weapon several times, in which they bounced back off. It was like a wild dance had commenced once the flurry of blade strikes slammed into each other, making small shockwaves that caused the water on their bodies to bounce off. Shinji struck forth with a downward diagonal slash. The force of that one strike from Shinji's blade caused Naruto to skid back, thus making an opportunity to summon several dozen clones to come at the Kage with a series of hand-to-hand blows. However, they proved to be useless against Shinji. The Kage survivors spun around them. Sharpened bones expelled from his rib cage, elbows, shoulders, forearms, and knees as he began to dance around the clones, slashing them to shreds, or wisps of smoke in their case. In the end, the violent dance he had done resulted in the clones being torn apart, and the clone army was decimated. Karamatsu no Mai. Shinji rose up from his kneeling position and stared at the blonde. Kage gave an unblinking gaze at Naruto before raising his hands, his fingers all pointed directly at the blonde. Teshi Sendan? He said with a lazy tone as several drilling bones from his fingertips launched towards the Jinchuriki. Naruto frowned as his blade struck several of the oncoming bones that Shinji was firing continuously. Sparks flew forth from the high-speed impacts of the steel-hard bone against actual steel. Though Naruto was successfully avoiding the bone bullets, some had actually managed to graze his body, cutting into his thigh, arm, and cheek. Channeling wind chakra into his blade, he quickly spun around as if he were atop. Uzumaki Ryu, Tatsumaki! A burst of wind circulated around the blonde, deflecting the bone bullets. The twister then moved forward, carving a small trench in the ground as Naruto stopped spinning and made a horizontal slash. The wind circulation system slammed into the wall as Shinji avoided the tornado before the young Kage launched himself at the Kyubi Jinchuriki. Naruto moved his nodachi in a horizontal motion, deflecting the many oncoming bones and reaching towards Shinji. The boy leaped over to his side, avoiding the attack and rushed toward Naruto as he raised his hand to his spine and pulled. With a series of sickening cracks and clacks, a whip formed from his spine was pulled out. He lashed out with his vertebrae-composed whip which slammed into Naruto's blade, sending him back. But as the boy was slowly getting out of his reach, Shinji slung his whip around Naruto's ankle and pulled. Tasenka no Mai, Tsuru to Sawara. He released the whip once Naruto was close enough before twitching his wrists. A pair of sharpened bone swords erupted from the location of his radius. Both quickly shot out into his empty hand. Crossing both blades he aimed to make a cross slash. This is the end for you, Uzumaki. Naruto narrowed his eyes as the wind around his blade sharpened. He switched the position of his hold on his own blade, gripping it in a sideways position and swung it downward. Uzumaki Ryu, Kazujiri. The two attacks clashed into each other before the bone blades began to chip, and within moments the blades were cut through halfway as if they were buzz-sawed. Leaping to avoid the attack that had now slammed into the ground, Shinji threw his now useless weapons away and smirked at the blonde. So he isn't half bad. Not even Kito had the ability to last this long with me, he thought as he summoned forth 2 more bone blades. Your futon is strong enough to cut my bones. To face a bone as strong as steel should be an honor for you. Not in the slightest, Naruto said as he smirked, thunder rumbling in the sky. Bone is just bone. You can cut it, break it, snap it, and crush it. Your bones are just more dense. Oh? I thought it would be an honor, but I was wrong. He rushed toward Naruto. Seems I'll just have to make a few cuts into your flesh to realize the true power of the Kage. Shinji said. Oh god, he's a stuck-up Kekkei Genkai genius. Seems I got to beat some sense into him. He thought as their blades clashed. A deadly dance of blades began as a shower of sparks mixed with the actual rain shower that fell from above. Shinji began trying to pierce and slash, while Naruto on the other hand was blocking and countering. Another cross slash from the Kage was blocked, and the sound of humming and buzzing met his ears as Naruto's blade sliced through his own. Shinji watched as his blades broke from the sharpness of the wind chakra and the resonance of the lightning chakra. This time Shinji did not retreat. He did the most unthinkable as his chest plate had risen up from flesh and skin as a type of armor plating formed on his pectoral area. The blade went further, skidding on the polished bone before it was captured by the clutches of Shinji's rib cage, which protruded out from beneath his skin, following after the boy's breastplate. Naruto's surprised look from his blade being captured had failed in allowing him to keep his bearing, thus resulting in him being unable to sense the oncoming blow to the side of his face. A powerful right palm strike from Shinji rammed into the blonde's jaw. A crack then met Naruto's ears as a devastating left hook nailed him in the face. The fist had been encased by a hardened bone of great density, the knuckles sharp and protruding out of the skin like a gauntlet. Said blow was strong enough to send Naruto back spiraling as he fell to the ground hard. The blonde groaned in pain as blood ran down his jaw line. The knuckles had ripped through his skin and slightly tore into the flesh. Naruto panted as his face was slowly healing, with Kurama's chakra stitching the torn flesh upon his face, and with a stiff shifting of his lower jaw, Naruto snapped it back into place. Giving a few test movements, Naruto stood up, satisfied with his jaw's realignment. Naruto felt the rain wash away the coppery-tasting liquid away from his face, which looked as if it was unharmed. The Konoha shinobi raised his eyes. This time he was successful in sensing the oncoming attack that was aiming at his down body. Quickly he rolled to the side, avoiding a bone-covered fist that hit the ground, causing a small puncture in the earth. Shinji raised his hand out as he had the blonde in his range. Kyaki! Soon bone launched out of Shinji's arm as the bone split into multiple pieces, attempting to pierce the blonde within its limit of range. Now! Naruto's eyes quickly glowed a blue hue and seemed to release sparks of lightning as his chakra spiked. Raijuu arc, Sonic Hoden! Lightning collected within Naruto's jaws, sparks of voltage bleeding off of the concentrated sphere of electricity. With a roar, the sphere exploded and it erupted from Naruto's maw as he shot it out in the form of a powerful beam. The lightning barreled through the air toward its destination. The prodding bone spears acted like lightning rods, and the lightning acting conducted along the length of Shinji's bones. It shot into the bones and into Shinji's body, electrifying his system, causing the boy to roar out in pain as the lightning continued to surge into his body. With the amount of water on his body, the lightning had seemed to intensify greatly, causing a highly intensified, shocking experience in his body's nervous system. Naruto raised both arms, held his hands firmly together as he dropped them down. Raijuu arc, Shotenjeki. A powerful lightning bolt shot out of his hands, hitting Shinji directly into his main body. Whatever lightning was surrounding his body dissipated once the attack hit, though left some remaining sparks on his body as the young Kage flew many yards through the air. The Kage bounced along the ground, cracking the ground slightly with every impact. When he finally came to a stop, he gasped for air as his body's autonomous functions were slightly paralyzed, his brain being to ignore any of Shinji's mental commands as shown by his body slightly spasming and losing all feeling. Shinji had felt his right arm was paralyzed and was out of commission. The footsteps of his opponent could be heard as Naruto began walking towards him. He lifted his head looking upon the blonde with heavy lids. That technique, what was? That was my bloodline, the Raijuu arc. It is an ancient bloodline that allows me to completely use the elements of storms like wind, lightning, and water. Sadly, I don't have water, so wind and lightning. I'll just leave it like that, can't spoil the secrets, Naruto said with a dry chuckle. He then gave Shinji a sad look. I didn't want to use it, but thinking of you personally, I didn't want to take the risk of facing you when you are all out. You're dangerous, possibly more dangerous than the last Kage I fought, so I made this match as fast as I could make it. The rain was just a bonus to make this match faster. Shinji froze when he heard the other Kage. His eyes widened as he shifted his head up quickly. Other Kage? He asked with a shaky voice. You met another Kage? I did, he replied with a nod. About a year ago. He was by far one of the strongest, most powerful people I have ever faced that wasn't anything higher than a jonin. Naruto looked up to the sky. A friend of mine was leaving the village, and your brother was one of the people who was helping him escape the village to go his master. My brother, Kimimaro? Shinji exclaimed, only to suddenly cough violently, spewing out a glob of blood as he did so. Wait, you mentioned a master? Shinji mumbled, confused. Orochimaru, one of the Sannin and former shinobi of Konohagakure. He wanted the power of an Uchiha, so taking one of the last Uchiha was your brother's mission. His battle against two strong opponents was a feat in itself, he said. I don't care about feats or anything, Shinji growled out. I want to know right now, is he alright? Is he alive? He asked straight to the point. Naruto lowered his eyes as he closed his eyes. I'm sorry, but when fighting a friend of mine, the disease that had coursed through his body had pushed him to the limit. It was supposedly through his own willpower that he managed to live through all the large amounts of attacks that had tried to kill him, Naruto stated. Sadly, that willpower wasn't enough to keep him going forever. His death was foreshadowed. Shinji froze, time slowing down as if it was out of place and non-existent. Hearing the words come out of the blonde's mouth, his head snapped up to glare at Naruto. Time returned, his mind holding a fury like no other, blood boiling as his paralyzed arm twitched. Lightning chakra coursed through the brother of Kimimaro, and suddenly, all bodily functions returned to him. A spark of lightning was all that was left of Shinji as he took off from his down position. In a blur, Shinji moved his entire body and pushed his fist into Naruto's stomach and roared in anger. His other hand raised as it rammed into the blonde's skull with enough force that Naruto felt as if his brain was flying around his skull. Shinji roared as his rage overpowered his mind, but the skill at which fought was still prominent as he lashed out with a variety of taijutsu moves. Shinji lashed out with a cross to the left cheek. Naruto's jaw creaked from the force before Shinji spread his arms wide and slammed his palms against the side of Naruto's head, sending a sound wave through his ear canals and discombobulating him. Worthless! Now in a dazed state, Naruto aimed a wild haymaker at the red-eyed bone user, but the Kiri shinobi employed an elbow block before striking a swift shot to the abdominal area. Blood and spittle flew forth from Naruto's mouth, but he tried to strike once more with a left hook shot. Kage parried it aside with his right hand before twisting slightly and slamming a strong elbow strike to the right jaw and thus weakened it, a crack being heard by all as the entire stadium was in silence at how easily Kage was making a comeback. Punch! He was all I had left. Another strong punch fractured the weakened lower jaw with another crack. Kick! My brother was all I had left, and you took him from me. I will now show you the pain I have felt, Uzumaki Naruto. The pain I felt from being alone all these years. Feel my pain! A strong punch to the ribs broke his already cracked ribs with numerous snapping sounds meeting the bone user's ears, and Naruto had released a gasp of pain. A follow-up punch traumatized his solar plexus before a final hook punch completely dislocated Naruto's jaw with a snap so loud it made crunching leaves sound like a pin dropping on the ground. Finally, Shinji employed a powerful heel kick to the diaphragm, or as others affectionately called it, a Spartan kick, and Naruto was sent sprawling on the ground. The blonde grunted in effort as he returned to his feet, shifting his broken jaw back into place so Kurama could heal it quicker. He shook his head rapidly as he aimed to get the ringing out of his ears when Shinji discombobulated him, but due to remaining in his dazed state he was not able to block Shinji's assault. You! Shinji growled out, his bone-encased fist rammed into Naruto's stomach once more and quickly forced the blonde into the air. How dare you take my only family away? You trash! He roared as he leaped into the air and soared higher than Naruto's heavy body and slammed a lightning-covered axe kick down into the blonde ribs. His opponent was coming down to hit the ground, but Shinji wasn't going to allow that as his lightning-covered body phased out of existence in the air and appeared below Naruto's back, dust blowing off the ground he now appeared on. I'll take you away. I'll end your existence. Bones of large proportion shot out of his body like sharp, impaling spikes. Azumi! He roared out as the blades came to a halt, ready to pierce the falling blonde. Naruto turned his head to look at the spikes, Kaze Shunshin no Jutsu. His body enveloped in blue chakra, Naruto seemed to dissolve into the wind, disappearing from his position in the air and appearing in a burst of dust in front of Shinji with a lightning-charged fist formed with blue lightning. Raitun, Reken! He shouted as the lightning fist rammed into the pale-haired boy's face. Shinji skidded back, staring at Naruto with anger as his bones returned to his skin. His fists encased with bone, but sharp-ridged bones surrounded his chest, back, shoulders, and forearms. The Kage rushed at Naruto, ramming a sharp bone-knuckled fist into the blonde's jaw and in return got a fist of lightning right into his temple. The bone user staggered, but did not give in to the blow completely as he sent another blow into the teen's stomach, the bones protruding in his forearm slightly puncturing the boy's flesh. With the blonde wounded, he had another punch on Naruto's cheekbone. Naruto growled as his muscles tightened around his abdominal area. His eyes flashed an ice blue in anger, head-butting the Kage in the face, following with another set of blows into the face. I'm not done! I'm not done yet, he thought as he shot a series of fast-paced, lightning-infused punches into the chest of the Kage, decimating the bone defense that was protruding out. The two sent repetitive blows into each other, as they kept sending their fists into the other's face or body. It wasn't until that when fists were no longer doing anything that they became aggravated. Charging at the other, Naruto and Shinji both roared at the same time as both skulls bashed each other in the skull. Naruto felt the impact hit his head pretty heavily as he felt as if he had gotten a concussion from that head bash. Blood trickled down his forehead, a mixture of his own and Shinji's poured down their face until they separated. Staggering, Naruto clapped his hands together before his left hand had begun to glow a white color. This will end now. He rushed out towards the pale-haired shinobi with glowing eyes. This jutsu, Kamina thought. The last Kage gritted his teeth as he hardened the bones in his chest into bone plating and hardened those in his left hand into a dense gauntlet of bone. You will fall, Uzumaki! He roared, following in pursuit as he began to run as well. The two tacked dust behind them before they came to a halt, and their attacks clashed. Tenten, Tengaku Tenno Haira! Bara no Mai Tsubomi! The two attacks had caused a great shockwave as light and chakra were flying around the place. Naruto's open palm was holding its own against the heavy bone fist of Shinji's bloodline. Both the light and chakra were staggering and waving around furiously as they crashed into the ground and the rocks around the area. The two contenders gritted their teeth as they pushed their all into their attacks. This battle is dash. Crack! Shinji's ears perked up as he raised his head and quickly looked at his boned fist and was coming to be shocked as his layered bone first was cracking and shattering within seconds. Then the sound of swirling picked up in his ear a brief second later, as he turned his attention toward the blonde which had chakra spiraling around him, and the light. The chakra came into his free hand into a spherical shape before it glowed into a blue hue. What? The fist coming to his chest plate and Rasengan! Cried out Naruto as the spiraling chakra sphere spun at Shinji's body plating. Quickly the plating broke and the sphere pushed further as it slammed into Shinji, who was screaming in pain to the other side, smashing his body into a tree. Naruto panted as he felt his head throb from the swelling that was slowly being healed by Kurama. His instinctual attack left him using too much chakra at once. It seemed that he still needed to master it still, just like all of his other techniques aside from his Kage Bunshin. He stared at the fallen Kage who laid silently on the ground now. The proctor jumped down to check the down boy that represented Kiri. When the man stood up, he raised his hand up. Shausa! Pointing his hand toward Naruto Uzumaki Naruto. For Naruto that would have been bliss in his ear. No, it would have made him just excited and gleeful enough for him to just run around the elemental nations twice over. Though he did the one thing he had wanted to do during his last match even after being healed. He passed out, but with a smile on his face. The cheering of the crowd seemed like white noise as blackness encompassed his vision.